Welcome to the SWIKE podcast, the only podcast that shares the stuff you didn't know you needed to know about jobs, careers, and life. The SWIKE podcast, the stuff I wish I knew earlier.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier podcast. We're here with Dominic Stevenson, and it was actually quite interesting because I was a guest on her podcast earlier. So to have her as a guest on mine, I think is awesome. So we wanted to get her perspectives in terms of her background as a future Black physician. She moved into kind of the business area, and she's actually a professional artist. So we'll tap into a little bit more of her background. But Dominic, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now?
Oh, hi, Luki. It's a pleasure being here. And I just feel like we've come full circle with you being on my first podcast. So I am actually in a health tech industry right now, currently on the customer care side of things. So I've definitely been like the face of what I found to be interesting, the tech world, and I brought the health interest there, the passion for health, as you mentioned, with Future Black physicians that I was a part of in the past. Right now, I also am a professional artist, as you mentioned. I've finally taken the leap in selling my art, creating it, putting it online, promoting it. I have a website, dominicjustina.com, and that's where I like to put all my creative endeavors on, including my podcast, which is the next thing. It's really my pride and joy, and I'm really trying to focus on creating more content with younger folks who are creatively inspired to kind of take their own path, similarly the way I have. So yeah, I have a few things in the works. I can't say I'm like I can pick and choose. I think I'm all of them combined at the moment, still figuring things out.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, and it kind of goes to some of the breadth of what's going on and the possibilities where you don't have to necessarily restrict yourself to one of those things. So I'd love to kind of step back and talk a little bit more about yourself as a kid growing up. So we alluded to the fact that you want to grow up and become a doctor. So was that always the case, even when you were kind of young? Like, where did you grow up? How did you grow up? And what were the kind of the influences along the way?
Good question. Yes, I think so I grew up in Jamaica, and I think the traditional industries are very well promoted to high school students, and that's the lawyer, the doctor, that kind of thing.
Right.
But for me, I personally was always surrounded by art. So my dad is a musician, and so I was introduced to music first, but then my parents put me in dance class. And so I was introduced to performing and using my body. And again, in comes music. So I always thought of myself as, I guess, quote unquote, right brained. But then I always did so well in bio in school. And it's just from elementary school. And I just followed that science track straight through to high school, straight through to university. No one in my family was a physician, which is funny enough. I just thought, my parents really latched on to the idea because, of course, like every parent wants to brag about their child being a doctor.
Sure.
They never forced me, though. So that's the thing. I never felt forced as a kid. Always had these artistic influences. I also, like, as a kid, like, followed through with dance, through to like doing dance company when I moved to New York. And learned some modern contemporary dance there. And then while doing that, I was also doing visual arts. So I guess I could say that art just never truly left my life. I just finally decided to pick up the paintbrush and treat it a little bit more seriously instead of putting it on the back burner. And I think science took a step back eventually. So I think, yeah, as a kid, I was just always doing art, but never thought of it as like that path for me. To take us seriously. And I was inspired to do science because I was a very curious kid. I always had questions, specifically with like human behavior. I felt like I was the kind of kid who would always observe more than speak, which is funny because now I speak with more confidence now. But back then, like, if you thought I was a mute, I wouldn't blame you because I would it would pass as shyness. I think I was just a very shy kid. And when I look back at it, I'm just like, I think I was just observing. Like, I just felt like I was observing like a television show or something. Life was a television show. And I often forgot that I could be more involved. And I often felt like I was more of the audience. So it's interesting now. I feel like all those observations I've made as a kid, now I have something to say. And when I say things, I just feel like I search for meaning within them when I say them, because back then I kept them to myself. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So yeah, I'd love if you kind of walked us through a little bit more on your journey. So you grew up in Jamaica
Mhm.
and you had those aspirations to become a doctor, mainly because it seemed like a pretty prestigious thing to do, right? So everybody else came from a music family, and oh wow, we have a potential doctor in the family. Seems like the right path to follow. But then you mentioned that you ended up in New York for a bit of dance in there, and then somehow you ended up in Toronto doing and starting an organization like Future Black Physicians. So how did that arc happen?
Well, of course, for my parents, specifically my mom, she wanted to see my opportunities expand. And so the idea of studying abroad or studying internationally came about because of her ambitions
Mhm.
for me. So I moved to New York to finish up high school, and I did the normal high school requirements. I was following along the scientific path. So I did biopsychology, those kinds of subjects, but art again just followed me along. So I ended up being invited actually into the dance company. And funny story, because I tried to join the volleyball team and I got kicked off almost immediately.
Okay.
I was just that bad. So ended up joining the dance company and then joining choir, that kind of thing. Finished high school, applied to colleges, and I got into U of T.
Okay.
And by then, my mom had applied for us to be permanent residents. So it just made a lot of sense to move to Canada at that point. And ended up at U of T, still was following the science track, wanted to do neuroscience as a major, and realized, hey, there is no pre-med program. What's going like being the track to as a pre-med student, the track to medical school is a pretty intense one, and you want to make sure that you're doing all the things you need to do in order to be a successful and attractive candidate, right, or
Sure.
applicant. And so I just found it super daunting that there was no program, like a one-stop shop in place for me to kind of lean on for support and help. And worse, there wasn't any representation. Like, I wasn't seeing many Black physicians around, or Black medical students for that matter.
Sure.
I mean, at some point I realized that I was at U of T, and the class of, I forgot which class it was, but there was only one Black student
Mm.
who was admitted. And that to me was just very discouraging. So I think I voiced my concern to Ike Okafor, and he was working on the downtown campus. And he mentioned, like, honestly, let me backtrack. Before I did anything about it, I inquired. So I did my surveys with upper years, with new students, like first years, with mid years, everyone I could find. And they're also Black, and their response to my question, which at the time was, do you feel supported on your journey to med school? It was all the same. No. And I just thought, it's okay. So it's not just me. It's not because I'm new to the country. It's not because I'm in my first year. Like, I have third years telling me the same thing. This is an actual problem. What can I do to help solve this? Not just for myself, but for all the other folks around me. So I voiced my concern to Ike Okafor. At this point, I knew that I wasn't the only person feeling this way. I got everyone in one room, and that's kind of how the Future Black Physicians was formed, or the inception. So what happened in the room was, I would say, where the magic started. Everyone started voicing out, fleshing out the problems. What could we do to solve? What do you need? Mentorship. What do you need? I guess testing support. What do you need? Events. What do you need? So all these things started coming to place, and I was just making notes of these and thinking, okay, it would be really nice to have an organization. It would be really nice to have a team. It would be really nice to make this official. And yeah, that's basically why Future Black Physicians started, because I literally sat down one day and was like, this is a problem. Let me see if anyone else is facing this problem. Before then, I never truly saw myself as a leader per se. But I think that experience was the first time I was like, hey, I actually enjoy this. Not because of like, I didn't think it brought as like this feeling of importance to me. It wasn't that at all. It was this feeling of proactiveness and getting people to connect that wouldn't necessarily connect outside of the situation, and like priming the air so that we could work as a team and get far and help each other out. So I think my low key, I'd like to say my interest in business started there without me knowing.
Cool.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, of course. So I think what I heard there is you definitely found an interest and passion in that kind of difference that you made, because you found this problem, you felt it, and then you realized, hey, everybody else kind of feels it as well. And then as a result, you did something about it. You put together this organization, and that's kind of where the underpinnings of business come in. And where I'd want to turn the conversation is to, well, now that you're the leader of Future Black Physicians, and then, well, you're not a doctor right now, so kind of what happened, and how do you go through that? Because from our previous discussions, like you identified a lot with that, because you are kind of the face of the program. You built it, you incepted it, and all that sort of stuff. And then something else happened. So can you walk us through a little bit about how you moved on and found something different?
Good question. And so I also want to preface this by saying there was, I think, a version of Future Black Physicians before. So what I did was, instead of creating a new organization, I just brought my idea to, at the time, the person who used to lead an organization similarly, and we joined forces there, and I was able to help breathe life into it more with my ideas. But I functioned with a team of people who were in the same situation. The idea was to overexpose. So this feeling of not being supported or being under supported, that was the issue. And what I wanted was the opposite of that. I wanted us to be so saturated in resources and context and mentorship that we were heavily informed in this idea of not just how do I make it to med school, but do I want to go to med school? And the goal, I realized, wasn't necessarily to transform everybody into a physician. The goal was to have a stream or community of support to help everyone make an informed decision. And I realized that was happening like when I would see the first rotation of execs. Some came and they left because thankfully the group was able to show them enough where they knew, okay, this is not my path, and I'm okay to step away now, knowing that I understand exactly like what this decision means for me and that this is the right decision. I was like, okay, that's fine. A little bit disappointed, a little bit feeling, obligated. I have to stay. There's no way I can leave, even if my feelings start to change. Well, little did I know my feelings started to change. There was one particular event that I went to, and I realized, wow, I do not see myself doing this and feeling fulfilled. But I didn't quite know how to communicate that. So I kept that internally. And then I remember I was interviewing an exec member who I wanted to join the team. She's awesome. And the way how she spoke about becoming a physician, I asked her what her backup plan was. And Luki, she said to me, there is no backup plan. This is it. This is all. This is it. And I was so moved by that. And I also understood like, hey, I do not feel that way. I think of my creative skills. I think of art. I definitely didn't think this was the only path. And so I realized quickly that sort of passion to becoming a medical doctor wasn't necessarily there. And it was tough to reconcile with. But I had to be honest with myself. Now, why I truly stuck around was because I really, really, really enjoyed working with the team, creating events, like problem solving, that kind of thing. I realized at the end of the day, what I really love the most for me about Future Back Physicians was running the organization. And I think that to me felt the most fulfilling. And then being able to inspire folks and help them along their journeys. I mean, recently someone from our group got accepted into med school, and she turned to me and she thanked me, and she's like, my influence was helpful for her, and that made me feel really great. So at the end of the day, I think towards the end of like me about to leave and graduate, I just mentioned to my peers that I didn't think that I would want to go to med school. And, someone else on the executive team who was really good at her role admitted the same thing in such a carefree way that I think at that moment, I just felt like, okay, I can breathe. It's fine. It's fine. I've explored this quite enough where I'm pretty confident and I don't have that what if in my head, compared to if I probably hadn't started the group and didn't feel supported throughout my 4 years with my pre-med journey. So yeah, I think I just overexposed myself to the point where I was able to make an informed decision. And for that I feel pretty confident in, my stepping away.
Cool. And what would you say to those who are kind of in a similar situation, whether they're on a path to become a doctor or a lawyer, accountant, or whatever, kind of that traditional path where a lot of it was bestowed upon them by mom and dad, by culture, and like it's nothing wrong with wanting to go there, but deep down they realize this is not what I want to do. This is not what I want to be. So in lieu of oversaturating themselves, like I don't know if they have the same opportunities, but it's someone who's in that situation of making that hard decision. Like what sort of things might you suggest to them? And then another question that I have is what does the discussion with mom and dad sound like? Like how does that happen? Is that an easy one? Is that a challenging one? So if you can kind of walk us through those two things, that would be amazing.
Wow. Okay. That's a really good question. I definitely agree with you. You don't have to go as far as like creating a club or organization to
Sure.
make an informed decision. I think
Yeah.
I think one thing I would take away from that experience though is to talk to people, because at the end of the day, your family might want you to do the traditional role, but it's your life and you want to make sure that you kind of lay a bed for yourself where you'll be able to live it without adding like additional stresses or pressures. You want to be happy ultimately with what you're doing. And so it's important to really reflect and think, is this something I want to do? And to think about what are the influences? Well, why? What's the why behind the reason you're going for that position? And if it's a strong enough why that you find agreeable, then go for it. But if you're having doubts, don't push it down, because they'll come back up sooner or later, in my opinion. So you could talk to people who are already in those positions. You could find them on LinkedIn. You could ask a family friend.
Sure.
It doesn't have to be an organization, and just ask, what's the day in the life? You're interested. People are a lot more forgiving and ready to help than you might think. So it would be nice to kind of do some investigative work. There's also so many YouTube videos on different career paths. I find YouTube is like the best university sometimes. So you could look up a day in the life of, let's say, a product manager or a lawyer, a doctor, even a medical school student. So there's a lot of information online and a lot of people we can access through our social media.
Right.
And then on top of that, with the talk with your parents, well, for me, I think it may have been easier because my parents weren't forcing me.
Right.
I will say my dad was a little bit more disappointed, which is funny because he's an artist and
Sure.
he wanted me to be in something what I believe was the opposite of what he was doing, something a bit more secure and safe. And so I remember he was introducing me to a friend and he was introducing me as like a future neuroscientist, and I hadn't told him at that point.
Ooh.
So I was like, oh, Dad,
Yeah,
by the
we gotta
way.
talk.
Yeah. Yeah, things changed. Because he's not here in Canada with me. He's in
Sure.
Jamaica. So but he wasn't mad. And to be honest, when your parents see that you're doing something that um feels the most right for you. From my parents, they were very forgiving. And if your parents aren't forgiving in the beginning, the hope is for them to finally see, see the value in you choosing what's right for you when you're able to make something of it. So, and that takes time. So it might not be the most pleasant conversation right away. I was just blessed to have my parents be really reasonable.
Yeah, and I found kind of similar things where oftentimes what parents want for their kids is for them to be happy, right? And the traditional path is you get a good job, which is kind of doctor, lawyer, accountant, engineer, all those sort of things, and then you live a happy life. But oftentimes, if you have a clear understanding, clear informed decision and conviction that you want to go down this other path, most I find when they have the conversation are quite reasonable. Maybe past a little bit of shock because you spend a lot of time down a certain path. But as long as it's not considered like a willy-nilly decision, well, I'm just going to go with the direction of the wind. If you have a plan and a clear understanding of where you want to go, most parents I find are quite supportive. And on the first aspect about if you're curious about your own decision, making it certain, I think that why is so important. And what I kind of heard is a different version of exposing yourself, not overexposing, but you need to talk to people. You need to get in that area. You need to be around folks that are going to be doing what you want to do. And if none of that resonates with you, well, you might want to think something else, right? And if it just maybe it's butterflies in your stomach and you're just a little bit nervous, well, maybe you keep going. But if it's at some point where you consistently talk to people in that area and they have the dream job that you've always wanted, and you're not resonating with anything in the conversation, well, there's probably something to that. So I think that's a great wisdom and advice there. But I mean, the story doesn't end there because you've now kind of switched, I guess, in different paths where the artist in you has kind of resurged. Where I guess you're on multiple paths where you're also in business and in art as well. So can you walk us through kind of that part of the journey as well?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing I probably left out is we're not truly exposed to all the opportunities out there. And sometimes we
Sure.
can create our own opportunities. So just because you say no to a path that you felt was for you for some time, it doesn't mean that a variation of that that's just for you isn't out there. It's just for you to search. And I'm still searching. So ironically, I moved into health tech because I knew I didn't want to be in a traditional hospital or traditional healthcare space. Another red flag when I was trying to become a physician. But yeah, I knew I wanted to be in a more modern, nuanced space that had a more of a primary focus on preventative healthcare. Um, and I landed on a health tech company that was a startup. So things were so different in the corporate world. It was not as traditional at all, and I was loving it. And there are some hard parts of it, and I mean, volumes can get really crazy. You don't have as big of a workforce to handle the capacity of work at hand sometimes. And so this was a period of my life where I really really needed something that felt like therapy. And for me, art always felt like therapy. And I guess in school, I was so busy and focused on the organization with Future Black Physicians, and I did a bunch of other things. I was doing part-time work at the university with the International Student Center. I was doing other clubs. I was I was on the executive team for a bunch of other clubs and just the busiest person in the world, and definitely putting my art on the back burner. So now I'm in the workforce. Now I'm feeling added pressures, and now I'm feeling more inclined to, self soothe and go back to my core, which is art. And so again, art just came up, like it follows me around. I'm telling you, anyways. So I think I started to take it a bit more seriously as soon as I graduated, and I thought, let me start this podcast. My first guest was an artist, and he was super, super confident in the art he was creating. And at the time, I had this little beanie art Instagram, and it was private, and I wouldn't follow anybody on it. So I would post and I would make these captions, really just talking to myself, like, oh, this process was super fun. I got to try this color, and like the complete antithesis of what social media should be. I wasn't socializing. It was like a private blog kind of thing. And he encouraged me to make it public. And so I did that. And then after a while, my confidence started to build. And then I started to create pieces. And then I joined a non-for-profit or art organization that helps emerging artists in Toronto. And they really exposed me to more creatives in the city and more opportunities to use my art and to make art. And I guess eventually, like, I was inspired enough and confident enough, like, who did I think I was to put the art that was on my secret Instagram page, now a public Instagram page, now on a public website, and now available for sale. It kind of just snowballed and became a thing of its own. And it wasn't planned necessarily. I just kind of like felt like taking the next step as the moment arose. So I'm really grateful for that journey, though, looking back, that it happened that way.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And what I took from that is sometimes folks are stuck in the throes of life, right? So the busyness of the world that kind of takes over. But if you take a step back and go back to whatever it is that kind of gives you comfort and that kind of therapeutic nature of it, for you as art, for other people, it could be whatever it is. And kind of surround yourself in that community and grow and kind of allow yourself to be within it. And then maybe there's other things that happen, and maybe you can start selling whatever it is that you're doing. So the bakers of the world, I don't know, crocheters of the world, or whatever, or I don't know, the video gamers of the world. Well, whatever it is that kind of follows you around, as you mentioned, maybe bring it back up and give it a shot, right? Because if the universe is trying to tell you something, then maybe you do, and maybe that's not it, or it's not time. But eventually, if you start listening, then things kind of come to you. So I think that's amazing. And what sort of I guess advice or SWIKE, the stuff I wish I knew earlier, would you give to yourself in any kind of major milestones of your journey? So whether it's the I don't know, high schooler in New York, or the university student, or like the recent grad, like are there any kind of key things that if you could give yourself like a post-it note piece of paper of kind of words of wisdom for yourself, what might you sneak in through kind of like all the time dimensional portals or whatever, right?
Good question. I have to think about this one because I think it would be a couple of things. The first one is definitely, and again, like, really great question. The first one being trust the journey enough where, because I would get as a kid, like super anxious about the future. And sometimes I still do. But now that I am where I am, I realize life events are connected. And that thing that you thought was happening for no reason actually is a major reason why you're here now. And so I realized that, if I stress less about what I think the timing should be and just embrace the reality of what is. So I guess it's this idea of just being present and doing the best you can in the moment you can. and just focusing on the things that are within your control. Oh my gosh, that that would have, I think that would have led to so many so many I guess opportunities to not be as anxious as I was, and
Sure.
it wasn't helping anybody, it wasn't helping me. So yeah, trusting the process and trusting the timing. The next thing is, if you have a skill, embrace it and don't hide it. Don't tuck it away in a corner. It's almost selfish to do that. Share it
Yeah.
with the world. No, you're not being, I guess I would say, braggadocious. You're not being obnoxious. You're not being egotistical. Share it with the world. Share it with yourself. Don't be ashamed of it. Embrace your gift and work on it. Work on your craft. Develop your craft. Yeah, I think those are the main two things I would say, is you just trust the timing and the journey, and don't hide your gifts away from the world.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think for the first one in trusting the journey, what came to mind is I often talk to folks dealing with kind of stress and anxiety and stuff like that. And I usually draw two circles where the first inner circle is what I call the sphere of concern. Sorry, the sphere of influence. So the stuff there is what you can control, what you can do something about. And outside that, a larger circle is the sphere of concern. So the things that you should know about and be aware of, but unfortunately you can't really do anything about. Too many people
Yeah.
live in that sphere of concern, right?
Yeah.
Versus like you can't
Yeah.
really do anything about it. And the thing is, if you can't do anything about it, why worry about it, right?
Yeah.
And if you live in that sphere of influence, if you can do something about it, well, choose when you do it, right? Do you want to do it right now? Do you want to do it next week, next month, next year, or whatever, or just sometime in the near future? And when you can kind of get that under wraps and figure out what the difference is of what is really in your influence versus what you should just be aware of, then that can be so much more free, and you become more
Yeah.
peaceful as a result too. And I mean, I struggle with it just as much as everybody else, but I've learned to manage it a little bit better. And on your skills, yeah, I would echo that. Where like I would encourage folks to pick something and find something to master, right? And be the best whatever it is that you want to be, right? So if you want to be a crocheter or whatever, be the best damn crocheter you want to be. And that's one of the things that I aspire for my kids is I don't really care what you be, but whatever you be the best damn whatever it is that you can be. So
I like
it's what
that.
it's one where so many people are kind of hedging bets and they're kind of just doing kind of everything. Whereas, sure, let's commit, and it doesn't mean you can't change it, right? Because oftentimes when you follow one
There you
path,
go.
you can build off, and it turns into something else, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like if I take my case in point, I did the computer science. I was okay at coding. I was pretty decent and good. I went into consulting, and I was pretty good at that. But what consulting has with what I'm doing now is I would like advise and coach my clients. And I think I'm a pretty good coach. But then the challenge is now that I see the world of coaching and all those amazing people out there, it's like, I suck and I have so much more to go. But at the same time, I'm probably better than a lot of other people. So I'm constantly learning and growing and things like that. And I encourage folks to do the same. And yeah, so thanks for sharing your story. And what are kind of the future aspirations upcoming? Well, I know you're still figuring stuff out. There's still much more to go, but what's kind of in the immediate horizon? Are there any kind of key milestones or key things that are underway? More that we can find from the podcast, or more art installations and pieces, or something else?
Good question. Before I answer this, I also wanted to say, you said crochet twice. So I'm
Yeah.
wondering, Luki, is this one of your like hidden passions?
No, I wouldn't say that. I think I watched it's like a Korean drama or something, and my wife was watching it, and that guy, he knitted like a scarf for his girlfriend thing. So it just came to mind. But hey, I never say never. So maybe I
You
should
never
pick up some
know. You
yarn
never
and
know.
and maybe I'm the world's greatest crocheter, and I just don't even know, right? But yeah, maybe I'll look into that. But
Yeah.
yeah, so what sort of things are upcoming for you?
For me, okay, so I recently have been looking into product management because I did a business course, well, kind of like an accelerated program. So they cramped like 10 MBA courses in 4 months. but
Okay.
I was introduced to product management while I was studying there, and it's the idea of like conceptualizing something, an idea, into a physical product from the idea generation stage straight through to execution. That like I think is my, and since I'm in the tech realm, like I think it's one of the things that's the most intriguing to me, and I'd love to experience that. So,
Cool.
you know, please send good vibes my way. That's a direction I want to take in my I guess I would say the tech realm of my career. In terms of everything else, my creative side. Also thinking that I could use more of my creative side in the tech elements of my career with product management, but in my creative side, it's more a bit more traditional. I want to be creating more pieces, selling more pieces, populating my website, and being more consistent. I was also talking to you about this, being more consistent with my podcast, because I had stopped at a point, and now that I've kind of brought it over to YouTube, I'm hoping to breathe more life into it. My sister is on board with helping me with it, so it's not just a one-man band anymore. I'm really excited about that, and yeah, just continue creating, whether it's the podcast project or creating a painting. I really do believe that creativity is not just traditional arts. In a sense, everyone has the power to create something, whether it's a business idea or, you know, coding or that kind of thing. So I will always be doing that. And besides the career milestone, the upcoming one with the product management and the aspirations towards building out more podcast episodes and building out, well, not building out, but creating more paintings. I hope to see it all come together one day. My aspiration is that it all comes together, and I'm a creative director of, I don't know what it could be, but I want to ultimately bind all my creations together in a way that helps to support others on their journeys to creating more of their unique path in this world. So it's kind of a lofty goal, and I don't think I have the best words for that distant future aspiration, but yeah, I kind of long for the day for all the pieces to kind of fit into a puzzle that finally makes sense. Because you caught me at a really interesting time, Luki. Like it's still it's still trying to make sense, and I'm enjoying the journey a lot more now. It was very daunting, I will tell you. Like, even though I knew it was the right decision to walk away from becoming a physician, um and like, no disrespect to any of the folks who want to become a physician, it's a really great and valuable role in society. I felt so lost, because here I was, you know, wanting to do this thing for years, and kind of felt like my world got pulled from under me, because now what am I meant to do? What am I supposed to do? So I'm enjoying the journey right now, and I'm kind of longing for the day for it to all make sense.
No, I think we caught you at the perfect time, in the sense that part of it is following you on your journey and figuring out where all of this takes you, and all the amazing kind of adventures that you'll have. And I kind of see you as kind of the founder and product manager of an I don't know, artistic tech company with a podcast on the side that interviews all these amazing artists and creators out there, that puts them and makes them available on this platform, like the Uber for artists, whatever that might be, or the Airbnb for artists. Pick one of those things, and and
That's a really good idea.
there you
I
go,
love that.
and go
Yeah.
build it out, and have that done. But yeah, I think you shared a lot of your story, which I think will help a lot of people in order to uncover and hopefully make their own decisions and journey. Like, so if you want to be a doctor, do it, but make sure it's a good decision. If you have kind of hesitations, well, think about it, and the right answer still might be to do it, but do it with an open mind, and overexposed information would be good. But yeah, and thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully we'll have you back to kind of give us an update, and maybe talk about some other things. Like I found a bunch of topics that we could probably do a deep dive into. But Dominic, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me, Luki. This is great.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on the SWIKE Stuff I Wish I Knew Earlier, the podcast. If you like the podcast, please subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you found this podcast. And if you can give us a review, that would be very appreciated. Feel free to contact me on LinkedIn at Luki Danu, LUKIDANU, and the same on most social media platforms. And I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks. Bye.